systems are go? Hi everybody, my name is Lennart Fahlén and you are very much welcome to this Swedish ICT webcast. This will be an ongoing occasional series covering a series of topics. Today's presenter is Claus Pop Larsen from Acreo Swedish ICT. Claus will address some issues concerning the very much discussed and hyped domain of Internet of Things. Welcome, Claus.
Yes, thank you very much, Lennart. Okay, so my name is Claus Pop Larsen, and the talk of my presentation is Internet of Things. Why aren't we there yet? And just shortly about myself. It all started in Copenhagen, at the Technical University of Copenhagen. After my education there, I got in touch with Ericsson, so that's the reason why I'm here, and I've now been living in Sweden for like more than 20 years. At Ericsson, I worked with optical fiber communication, and then when the IT bubble was the biggest, I moved to a small startup, and when the IT bubble burst, I moved to Acreo, and I've been here ever since. And I'm now working with broadband and services, how to get broadband services out to everyone. And I'm working as Head of Innovation and Business Area Urban Life here at Swedish ICT. So, but let's get started. Internet of Things. Internet of Things is the idea of connecting everything that can be connected and doing some kind of measurement and maybe some kind of control as well. So everything that we can think of that can be connected, like your refrigerator at home, like your plants, your television, your stereo, your brain, maybe everything that can be connected should be connected. So this is what we think of Internet of Things. That we have all these many connected devices. But is that really Internet of Things? Well, let's it's at least it's connected devices. Let's have a look at this one. And you have seen this slide before, I guess most of you, and it shows how many billion of things that are connected to the internet. And here we have the year on this scale. And the magic numbers, like we have 50 billion devices in year 2020. This is a Cisco slide. Ericsson has said the same. Other people, they say maybe we reached 30 billion devices in 2020, maybe it's 100 billion devices. It doesn't really matter. What matters is that we have this exponential growth. And at the moment we are maybe halfway to this goal in 2020. We don't really know yet, but it's growing very, very rapidly. But is a connected device the same as Internet of Things? Just because we have 50 billion connected devices, does it mean that we have Internet of Things? And not really. This is Gartner's emerging technology hype cycle. And this is the latest one is from July 2015. And you have different emerging technologies on the curve here. These to the left are very new hot areas, but they're not that hyped yet. Here at peak of inflated expectations, you have the technologies that are the most hyped. And on top of this curve, you get autonomous vehicles and Internet of Things. So Internet of Things is on top of the hype cycle today. Now if you look back 1 year, the previous one, even at that time Internet of Things was at the top of the hype cycle. So maybe next year it's still on the top of the hype cycle, we'll see. But then after the top of the hype here, after the peak, you go through this trough of disillusionment. And there are some of the technologies, people they start thinking, well, there was so much hype about them, why aren't they used at the moment? Some of them will disappear and some of them will survive and get through the slope of enlightenment and eventually reach the plateau of productivity. And this is when, for example, if we take Internet of Things, this is when we'll start to use Internet of Things. That will be part of our daily lives. It'll just be there and it'll work without we will think about, oh, this is Internet of Things. And this is where we want to go with Internet of Things. But at the moment, we're here at the very top of the hype cycle. And it's also Internet of Things. It's easy to say. So if I'm lazy and people ask me, so what are you doing at work? And I say, well, I work with digitalization and Internet of Things and stuff. And they, oh, that's cool. And yeah, but I didn't really say much, did I? It doesn't really say so much. So why aren't we there yet? I will give you some examples, but I think the technology is almost there. There's still a lot of research to be done, but if we really wanted to, from the technology point of view, I think we could build Internet of Things. And I will define later what I mean. But we need new business models and new way of collaborating, and we're not at all there yet. And this is one of the major points. Also, we see that businesses today, or companies today, they are protecting their own business. So it's not necessarily so that even though you're a big company within IT and telecom, that you really want to embrace Internet of Things because it'll threaten your business. And also the organizations, they are not really ready for this yet. If you say that Internet of Things and digitalization, it's like they're very close to each other, organizations, they still have a long way to go to adapt to this. So, but the major point, and it's part of all these, is that we have lack of sharing data. We can't share data in a meaningful way. And I will give you some examples. This is the first example, the digital thermometer. And you see all the way to the left, the first digital thermometer, where you had measurement and display units were integrated. And that was a really cool device when it came, and I got one, but it doesn't give you that much, because you can have an old analog thermometer outside and you can see what the temperature is anyway. But then came this one, the next step in the evolution, that you separate measurement and display units. And when you do that, you can actually have the measurement unit outside in the garden, for example, and you can see inside, oh, what's the temperature? And that's a step forward. It says it gives you something extra. So the next step is that you have the measurement and display units separated over the internet. And now you suddenly have one of these 50 billion connected devices. And this is very good, because then in my country house I can measure the temperature and I can monitor it from anywhere in the world to see, oh, if it's too cold, maybe I should get out there and do something. But this is extra value. This is really good. This is a connected device. We like that. But it's still not Internet of Things, is it? It's a connected device, but it's not really Internet of Things, because data lives within this small system here. I don't share data with anyone else. So what I really want to have, before I would like to call it Internet of Things, is that you have this measurement and display unit. They're separated. It's connected over the internet, so it's a connected thing, but I would like to share data with other people or other devices or other services. So if I have my measurement unit here, I can receive the data, but I would also like, and this is my iPhone, if we say this is my iPhone, but I would also like that my neighbor on his Samsung plate can actually see what's the temperature at my country house. I don't know why my neighbor would be interested in that, but maybe, you never know. Also, I would like to have this temperature data connected to my heat pump at my country house, right? And maybe connected to the frost guard in the shed if something happens there. But I can't do this today. There are no mechanisms for doing that. If I had bought the whole system from one vendor, then it could be done. But then it's not Internet of Things, then it's kind of intranet of things, right? Because the data only lives in a small bubble. So what I want to do is that I really want to share my data, but I can't do it. Technically, I can do it today, but there are no mechanisms for actually handling that it'll be done in a good way. So this is what we're missing. And this is another example. This is smart plugs. And I have all these smart plugs at home. I started to build a system based on Telstick and Nexa equipment, and so I can control a lot of the outlets in my house. Then I got one from my security company. Maybe you can recognize the logo here. And they sent me one, and it had an own app as well, so I could couple it to my smartphone. But it didn't really work well with my Telstick Nexa equipment. There was no interoperability. So to control this one, I needed a separate app. There was no connection between them. Then a year or so, I got one from my electricity supplier, and they just sent one to me, and it was the same. It was a separate app, and I couldn't control it anyway. So I'm not using these two, right? Even though they're very good, but I can't have different systems at home. It doesn't work. So this is really such a waste of money and resources, really. And I'm the customer, so I know that I will pay these eventually. But it's still a waste of resources to make these devices that I can't use, so I'm not interested in using them. But what really bothers me is that, again, there are no mechanisms so that they can actually work together. So this is my colleague Roland, and we stepped out into the real world here. This is a few weeks ago, and this is in the basement of a building. Here we have the water pipe, and this water pipe supplies, I think it's 100 apartments in something like 5 or 6 buildings. And this is one of these analog meters, you know, with the discs that are rotating, so you can see the water consumption. And the way this is measured today is that there's a guy walking around each month and reading this one, the consumption, and then goes home and enters it into some system in a computer. So there's nothing automated about this one. And this is kind of the situation for Internet of Things, many places today. So what Roland has done is he built a device with a camera and a Raspberry Pi, so he could actually videotape these numbers here, and with optical character recognition, just retrieve the number so it's accessible in a database. And the guy who before needs to collect this data once a month, he can now check it every time he wants to. So he gets much better control of everything. Plus he can stay at his office. It's not everywhere that it's so primitive in buildings. So this is more like a state-of-the-art building today. Okay, so the question is if the example here was if I'm happy with this one, if it's just an example. This is part of another project, and I won't describe it further. This is just an example of how the status is today, because I think maybe we tend to think that much more is connected than what really is connected outside of the institutes. So it was just an example. This is from a public housing company, and this is a real example. Well, the other was also a real example, but this is how you have different sensors up here on the top, and you can see there are so many things that you can measure in a building, multi-family house, and you can measure water, hot water, cold water, temperature, access control to the doors, fire alarm, water alarm, leakage alarm. There's alarm for the elevator, and there are so many different things you can measure. But what's interesting about this is that, and this is, as I said, this is state of the art. What's interesting is that each sensor has its own data collection unit and its own way of communicating over the internet down to the service provider. So this is in principle, this is like 10 or maybe 15 different parallel systems, and they're pretty much doing the same thing, right? They're sensing something, collecting data, and transmitting it over the internet. But instead of sharing all this, you have 10 or 15 parallel systems. And this is the this is the status today, this is something that's completely unacceptable if you think about it. Of course, it should be some kind of Internet of Things based solutions where you can actually share all data and share the communication and everything. So what we see is that we have these silos everywhere, vertical integration, and these can be different industries. All of these, they want to reinvent their own digitalization and Internet of Things, and they all do that, or they try to do that. Within these silos, you have different companies, but maybe within the same industry. And it's not that they are collaborating or anything. They also like fighting each other and doing their own inventions again and again. And within a company, you have the different departments doing the same again and again. So this is not good. So we want to tear down all these silos here and start sharing. And we want to share different things, both data and physical resources. So if we start to talk about sharing, then we need to get into the sharing economy. This is that was not on Gartner's hype cycle. It should have been there. Maybe it's because it's not a technology, but it's very hyped. But it's good. It's not a bad thing. Okay, so here you have different taxi companies, and the way you have it is you have a service, you have a platform, and you have a resource. And if it's a taxi, the resource will be a car and a chauffeur. And now they are pretty equal, these different taxi companies. And what happens is that you as a customer, you call into the platform and they will arrange so that you will get a car and supply you with your service, which is transportation from A to B when you need it. And it works well. But the funny thing is that you have these many different taxi companies that are actually doing the same thing. And how are they differentiated? Well, they're not really. Some of them are much more expensive than others, but apart from that, it's pretty much the same. And you can get what's on the next slide, right? So it's Uber, of course. So what has Uber done? Well, they have focused on the platform here. I will just go one slide back again. So you see here we have 4 different platforms. Here you have 1 different platform. So what Uber is, it's a platform and a business model. That is Uber. Uber, they don't own the resources. So the resources here, that's also a car and a chauffeur. But that could be you and me, for example. And Uber, they don't give the services, right? They can offer the services over the platform, but it's not them that are actually giving the service to you as a user. So they have a platform and they have a business model. Now, if you have a platform like this, and you don't own the services and you don't own the resources, you want to have as many resources into this and as many services. So it's extremely important that these interfaces, they're very clear and easy to follow. So interface downwards so you can connect the resource, and interface upwards so you can connect the service. And also, in this case, you need to have some kind of a marketplace. But that's part of the platform here. So if you log into Uber, you can see there are different kinds of services. It's not that many, but then you can choose one of them. So it's extremely easy for the one sharing the resource, the one actually delivering the service, and the customer. And in this model here, there's a way of getting paid, so everyone will get their share, right? So this is how Uber works, and this is how a lot of the companies within the sharing economy works. But again, it's about a platform and a business model. Okay, thank you. That's a very good question. I forgot to say it. The question is, why do you have trusted service operator here? Well, so we operate with this trusted service operator, and it's very important that it is trusted. And trusted, that's really in all senses, because you need to trust this one. You need to trust Uber in this case in order to use their service. If for some reason you have distrust in them, you're not using them, and if you don't use them, and Uber, they don't own their services and resources, then the resources and services, they will also disappear. So if you only have the platform, the trust is extremely important. You really need both as a customer and a service provider or resource provider that you can trust them that it actually works. I'll come back to this service provider or trusted service provider thing later. Okay, Airbnb, it's the same. They have a platform. They don't have their own resources. They don't supply their own services. They have a platform and a business model and a marketplace. Their marketplace is much bigger than Uber's because it's all the houses and apartments that you can rent. Android and iOS, that's also examples of these trusted service operators that have a platform and a business model. Blocket or Amazon are all digital or electronic marketplaces are such examples, where the resources is what you want to sell, and you are able to buy or trade or something as a service. But also here you have extremely simple interfaces. So it's simple to put up a thing you want to sell on the platform, and it's simple to actually buy it. And there's a way that you get paid. Sometimes it's through the system, sometimes it's outside of the system, but it works. Now, if you think that, for example, on Blocket, that if you want to buy art, this is just an example. If you want to buy art on Blocket, but you have heard that on Blocket there's a lot of fake art, then you don't trust them any longer. Then you stop buying your art on Blocket and go to some other digital platform, and Blocket will lose this segment. Yeah. 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 Okay, so the question is, how important is it that we have one platform, a dominant platform? Because maybe we could have several platforms doing the same thing. And I don't know really. But what you see here is that these Uber, Airbnb, Android, Blocket in Sweden at least, they came into the market first, so they grabbed a huge share. So it's like kind of the winner takes it all. But you do see that there are competitors to Uber, and you do see competitors to Airbnb. So, and we don't know what will happen in the future. I guess there will be many different platforms. I'll come back to what it means with data, because in the data world, then you need to have some kind of federation so you can actually share data. Maybe here it's not that important. It's actually not what I want to talk about here, but yeah. Yeah. No, it's not. No. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So so the question is, what do we do if we have multiple platforms? Won't it just be a mess in that case? And again, I don't know really. But if you look at the smartphones, for example, you have 2, maybe 3, maybe 3.5 platforms that you choose between, and it works well. Maybe we will end up in such a situation. I don't know. But if you look at digital marketplaces or electronic marketplaces, you still have a large number of them, and it works. Maybe it will be for different segments or type of customers or type of services. I don't know. So, but I will. Yes. The customer will decide. Yeah. 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 Okay, so the comment is that the customer will decide, which is a very good and relevant. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, I completely disagree that you don't need the middle box. But apart from that, I agree that it could end up in some kind of chaos. But we don't know. We don't know what will happen. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Okay. So we want to do the same for data. What you saw in the sharing economy, you talk about physical resources. That will end. So they are not unlimited. It's limited resources. If it's data, it's unlimited resources. So it's a little bit different, but I think you can use the same principles for the business model. So you have here, instead of several vertical structures, you break them down and you have different layers. So you have resources, you have some kind of service platform, and you have services on top of it. And I will show you an example of how it can be done. But this is what we are trying to aim at for data as well. And this is project. I just want to show this slide here because we are funded by Vinnova, so they are very happy that I show this slide. But in this project, we're doing installations six different places in Sweden where we actually want to implement this Internet of Things, sharing platform things, including business models. And this is the vision picture for our project. And I will just go through it shortly. Here we have sensors. Before we had sensors on top. Now we have sensors down here. Here we have different kinds of sensors. It can be related to the building, so it's some kind of facility service. It could be social care services if you're old, for example, or it could be some kind of private services. But what will characterize each and every of these sensors today, how it is typically, is that it's a sensor that has its own data collection unit, its own communication device, and comes up to the service supply up here. So in this case, you have like these 10 different parallel systems, and you can look at what you have at home. If you have a thermometer, or you have something that's connected, it's different devices. Maybe you can share internet, but if it's in an environment like this, for facility services, you don't want to share internet. And if it's social care, you don't want to go over the normal internet. If it's electricity metering, you don't want to go over the normal internet. If it's some kind of alarm service, you don't want to go your normal internet. So what we want to do is here that we want to share. So we want to share the data collection units here, and we want to share the